Brooklyn Independent Television.
It's been 40 years since President Nixon declared America's war on drugs. And in that time, countless Brooklyn families have been affected. Anna Lamont of Salisbury has the story of one Brooklynite's cycle of drug addiction, prison release, and return, and how she's made it her life's work to help Brooklyn families affected by the war on drugs.
Worth is an organization that is run and led by currently and formerly incarcerated women. And what we do is we change public perception and policy through advocacy, organizing, legislative change, rewriting legislation, that's what that means, and leadership development, training, education, and public education as well. I came to this work, I guess I could say, while I was in prison. I was pregnant with my 7th child, and I had an experience in prison where I knew that I didn't want to continue to live the life that I had been living. I don't know what happened. I don't know why. I know I started using drugs, and I know as a result of that I started going to jail. And then from going to jail, going to prison. The rise in numbers of women in prison at that time was over 800% between the early 80s and the 90s due to the war on drugs. Since I was in prison for a parole violation. And I had less than a year to serve, or a year and a half at the most. And so I found a program that would accept me and my son in foster care. Well, the second visit I had with her, she had my record in front of her. My record was this thick. And she said, "No, looking at your record, you're always going to be a crackhead. You're not going to change. Why should I invest in sending you to an alternative to incarceration?" And I was really pissed off.
Did they bring down enough so that we could hand them out so everybody could be handing out something?
You know, maybe it's just me. Maybe it's because my record. Maybe I went through all the maybes. But when I got back to the dorm where I was staying, I looked around me and there were many women that were denied opportunities, that were never asked whether they needed an alternative to incarceration, whether they had a substance abuse history, or, you know, whether they had children. And I knew it wasn't just me.
After seeing what I went through, coming out of prison, and not having any type of services offered to me or available to me, and then seeing the women that I encountered in prison that were in there for just, you know, the most ridiculous charges. It upset me, and I didn't want to stand on the sidelines. I wanted to do something about it.
Their stories weren't much different than mine, no matter what they looked like, no matter where they came from. And I always get emotional about this. I really felt like there was a specific response from our society that said that we were throwaways, and that our children didn't matter, and that our communities didn't matter.
The reason, or how I came into doing this work for this organization, is because my mom, Tina Reynolds, is the founder of Worth. And I have been doing some advocacy work for the majority of my life, basically since I was, I want to say 12-ish. I started doing advocacy work for children of incarcerated parents, and that's basically why I'm doing this now. Some of the things that I remember doing was working very closely with the Bill of Rights for children of incarcerated parents, which are 8 Bill of Rights that haven't yet become a reality for these children, or not necessarily become policy, which is also what I've done a lot of work around, trying to get these Bill of Rights established into society, which are just basically natural rights, one of which, I'll just list a few. I have the right to speak with, see, and hear my parent. I have the right to a lifelong relationship with my parent. I have the right to be heard when decisions are being made about my parent.
After you've served your time, you should be able to regain your civil and human rights upon your release, because you've served your time. There are certain things that impact people like employment and education and, housing, supports as far as entitlements, medical care. So voting rights, the list goes on and on. And I think that our conversation is much needed because it's been 40 years.
Become a fan on Facebook, like Brooklyn Independent Television.